I'm your host, Peter Komendowski, and welcome to Surviving Bad, where we explore Iowa's stories of survival, hope, and inspiration. We're joined today by Chris Bartlett from Gettysburg College, Nate Monson from Iowa Safe Schools, and Nicole Hayes from Iowa State University, all experts on our topic today, bullying. Children faced with aggression and violence in the form of bullying are engaged in a complicated struggle. Faced with living in isolation, the bullied and the bully need our help. Let's hear what our guests have to say, and we'll start with some short introductions. Chris, starting with you, tell us why you're here and what your passion is.
Yes, thank you. My name is Chris Bartlett. I'm a social psychologist currently residing in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. I'm an associate professor in the psychology department at Gettysburg College. It's a small liberal arts college. I received my PhD in 2012 from Iowa State University, working under some of the top aggression researchers in the world. And currently, my line of research is to examine the variables that predict cyberbullying. And I have been working since I got here to Gettysburg almost 8 years ago on developing my own cyberbullying theory for implementing a unique take on cyberbullying prevention, and also trying to understand the variables and the theories that are important for cyberbullying prediction. And I published many papers, a recent book, and my overall goal is to understand cyberbullying so that we can reduce it.
Excellent. Nate?
Yeah, I'm Nate Monson. I'm the executive director for Iowa Safe Schools. We're a statewide nonprofit based here in the great city of Des Moines, Iowa. And I've been doing this work for 13 years now. And I came on to the role right after the state of Iowa just passed our anti-bullying law. So our organization was founded to pass the initial law back in 2007, which laid a lot of the framework of what we work on today. We do a lot of professional development and support for students, especially those who are LGBTQ and marginalized youth across the state, and how do we empower them.
Excellent, thank you. Nicole?
Hi, I'm Nicole. I am a fifth-year PhD candidate in the social psychology program at Iowa State University. I have my master's in psychology, which I earned from the University of Massachusetts. And I'm broadly interested in understanding different factors that either increase or decrease different types of aggressive behaviors. I have two areas of interest that I've been working on. And one is examining the overlap in different types of aggressive behaviors and the different types of victimization. The other area of interest is understanding different cognitive processes related to different types of aggressive behaviors, including biased attention to threat and different executive functions. And overall, I mean, we want to better understand these factors so that we can ideally prevent and reduce these behaviors.
You know, one thing that brings us all together here is a joint project we're doing with Des Moines schools, where we're going to try and implement surveys that can monitor some increases in youth interest in different forms of aggression, bullying, and different high-risk behaviors, so that we can have a chance to intervene, intercede, and provide interventions before they become ingrained in what's happening. Chris, I'd like to get your opinion on the potential you see in terms of the relativistic ability of time for us to be able to do stuff in real time in schools. Do you see some potential there, looking at what you're studying in terms of cyberbullying?
Yeah, Peter, that's a really good question, a really important one too, because, you know, in theory, things are supposed to work a certain way, but then when you get to practice, it's really difficult to actually pull a lot of this off. And you know, I think that if you're going to be implementing surveys or interventions or whatever the programs happen to be in schools, I think it can be done and it should be done as long as you have a really good relationship with the administrators within the schools themselves. So in my experience, at least here in Pennsylvania, I've had wonderful working relationships with principals and superintendents, which and therefore teachers, which really allowed these surveys and intervention kind of pieces to really work well. And I think that's really what you need. But you need that. You need to go into the schools to examine the problem, to study the problem, to get real answers in real time from real students, from their teachers, from their principals, from their parents, just as much information as you can get. Because the more information you got, the more you're able to address the problem at large.
That's a great point. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, I'm going to ask Nate to talk about that relationship with schools, because I know you have a close one with the Des Moines school system. So when we come back from the break, we'll continue this conversation on this very important topic, bullying. You don't want to miss this. See you after the break.
I don't know how we would have survived without Mediacom. We have 5 kids, my wife and I, and we have Mediacom for all of our internet and all of our cable services. So I'm stuck in my house, but at the same time, I'm connected to people all over the world, and it's been fantastic.
Thanks to Mediacom, I've had reliable internet to continue to work business as usual, so that I can continue to provide for myself and my family.
Right now, we all feel like the world is in a standstill. The internet has played a huge role in allowing us to stay connected to our jobs and the kids' schooling online and finding fun and creative ways to stay connected with the ones that we love. We couldn't do it without Mediacom.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. We're talking about how the world is changing for our children and how they have to deal with new levels of aggression and how it influences their actions in their lives, and particularly what's happening in schools to help deal with this problem. One of our guests, Nate, you're with Iowa Safe Schools. You've been there for years. You've been part of the evolving sort of development of this anti-bullying program. Tell us what the relationship is like with schools and some of the things you've learned over the years.
So, schools are, they're really a mirror of what's going on in our community. And so, when we're talking about something like bullying, schools are kind of mirroring what those issues are and those challenges are in each individual community. Right now, with an election looming, we talk about political bullying happening a lot. And so that's kind of a major challenge that we're seeing in schools and what the number one call is. And that's evolved over time for us as an organization, the kinds of calls we get, what are the topics. As cyberbullying has become more relevant and appearing more rapidly, it's been a real challenge for schools, because how do you investigate, how do you respond to those issues as they come up? Bullying isn't that simple. Someone called a name in the hallway anymore and we can address it right there in the hallway. It's off school grounds, it's on school grounds, it's both. It's on platforms like Snapchat, which disappear within 30 seconds. And so how do you respond has been an issue. And so what we do a lot is working with schools on how do you investigate that, and then how are you going to work with the student with the bullying behavior, as well as the victims. Oftentimes those victims come from marginalized communities that their voices are much more oppressed. And so how do you raise them up and how do you listen to them? And that takes, not only surveys, but it takes a lot of humble moves from those that might be in the majority. And so school administrators that often represent our majority population or those in power, need to take a minute and really talk to those students about their experiences, because you can learn a lot just from having those conversations.
Well, one thing, and I'll ask Nicole to talk about this a little bit. One thing we've noticed, what we know from looking at the research, is that we have a bully needs help too, because people don't choose to be bullies necessarily. It's not quite that simple. But in terms of the children that are bullied, they really rarely speak out, and they rarely have a voice where they actually talk to a teacher or a parent. And so that overall effect of that bullying is to drive them out and away and stigmatize them. And so we're hoping that the same things that technology has sort of stimulated in a bad way, like providing more access to ways to bully kids, that same technology now opens the door to giving those scared children a chance to speak up. So when you say the word survey, for a lot of us, it sounds daunting and clinical. But in fact, if there's a confidential way for children in an environment to speak up without the backlash that stigmatizes them, whether it's real or imagined, we think that that might be a way to open the door, and this technology might, on the good side, have this potential. Nicole, what are your thoughts?
So I think one of the issues, as Peter brings up, is, for many reasons, children are reluctant to talk about their experiences. I think one thing that we see in the literature on interventions and preventions are bystanders. So peers that may not necessarily be involved in the actual bullying, they can play an important role in providing support for targets of victimization. They can play a role in perhaps addressing the bully. So that's one area that might help provide some resources and support, is targeting not only areas in which the victim can voice their concerns, but also other students that may be in the background witnessing these behaviors.
Chris, in your research, where do you put the bully in this framework? I mean, is there also an effort that you see can be valuable in helping heal men, or provide a path of healing for the bully instead of simply responding to the bullying as a problem?
It's a hard question to answer. A couple of thoughts. I'm going to kind of go off what Nicole said as well, because she's right on with the bystander information that she gave. But one of the challenges with this line of research is that a lot of the questionnaires and surveys that we use in these schools are anonymous, and ethical constraints force that upon us researchers, which is completely understandable. And so if a victim or a bully want to speak out and say, here are my experiences, I need help, it's often the case that the researcher who's in there isn't really going to know who that person is. So if I have a questionnaire that where all their answers are on a scale of 1 to 7, and they all write 7, I've been victimized a lot, I'm not going to know who that person is unless they either come to me, or maybe they read my debriefing form and they're like, oh, I should go to a counselor. So, it's really hard. And that's where the bystanders are so key, because they can really help teachers and counselors really understand who needs the help, whether that's the bully or the victim. Now, to answer your question specifically, Peter, about the bully themselves, I rarely see a case where a kid either acknowledges that they are a bully, and even then, it's even more rare, I guess, if they were to go and say, you know what, I need help, I'm a bully. I don't think it happens that much. And just as an example, and then we can move on to someone else, so I'm not dominating the talking. One of the things that I was collecting data in the middle school once, and there were some cyberbullying questions, and they were to respond how frequently they did it. And one of the questions were like, I make fun of some other people online. And I had a girl, 7th grade girl, raise her hand and be like, well, I do this, but it's not bullying, it's just to be funny. So even though they did it, they didn't view themselves as a bully or as an aggressor. And I think that creates problems in terms of identifying and helping the bullies that are out there.
Those are great points. And we'll take a short break. When we come back, I'm going to ask you all to take a closer look at how current events have changed how children think and act in relation to aggression and bullying, and maybe a look at the influences that peers, the observers, and mentors can have on opening up to this problem. So stay tuned. We'll see you after the break. You don't want to miss this.
Today, more than ever, you need fast, reliable internet. At Mediacom, we want you to know you can count on us. Our fiber-powered 100% gigabit technology network was built for the future. We have enormous capacity and power, and 99.99% network reliability. So even though these are uncertain times, we're prepared, and you can be certain we'll keep your world connected.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Right now, millions of people and billions of devices are connected to the internet. Homes, businesses, hospitals, schools. The security and reliability of these connections are more important than ever. That's why at Mediacom, we've built a network to protect them. A network that sees threats, fixes problems before they occur, and keeps you going with 99.99% network reliability.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. Bullying and aggression have been around a long time. We're talking about it, but now there are more things we can do to help heal those most affected. Let's hear what our experts have to say about the positive movements in dealing with bullying and aggression. Nate, starting with you, you've done some great things in the schools. Tell us what's really been working there.
You know, one of the key things is a bullying investigation that incorporates a pre and post safety plan is what we have found to be really successful. So from the point a student reports an incident of bullying, which highly recommend anyone watching, if you are being bullied, report it, or if your child's being bullied, report it to the school. And that should trigger what's known as a pre-investigation safety plan, where the entire intention is let's make the target or the victim of the bullying behavior safe. In the post-investigation safety plan, what's great is after we've done the bullying investigation, then we start to find solutions or what can we do for not only the target of the bullying behavior, but also the bully themselves. And so some key parts of that is one, making sure that our school counselors are not the one conducting the investigation so they can be supportive of all the students involved, but then also finding ways that aren't just, a punishment against the person having the bullying behavior. It's working with them. How do we work through the situation? So for example, if that involves a student cyberbullying, well then guess what? They don't get access to their phone during the school day. They have to only access that in the office instead of just suspending the student. And so those are the kinds of solutions that we see working well with the schools.
Chris, some of your thoughts, because obviously one of your big factors is to reduce the incidence of these cyberbullying incidents.
Yeah, thank you. I think that the Nate, what you said sounds like the Des Moines schools are really doing a good job. I just wish all school districts could be as thorough as what you guys do. I think that what we need to understand about bullying, or cyberbullying or traditional bullying, it doesn't matter, is that there's a lot of influence, and because there's a lot of variables that influence it, there also needs to be a lot of variables that can be present to help kids be resilient. And that means more or less a triangulated effect where the schools are involved, but also the parents are involved. And also you need to have the kids involved with like the bystander stuff, or just being able to report it and not being afraid to do so. So I think if a school is going to be successful, it's going to take more than just the school's efforts, because they can only do so much. So that's what I think is going to be the most important influence here, is all three combined.
Now, Nicole, you're working on this project with the Des Moines schools. How do you feel about, getting to the meat of this factor with the surveys that we're doing? Because we are going to be working with school counselors and starting out working with what we would consider at-risk populations.
I'm really excited to be working with adolescents and to be really involved in the community piece. A lot of the research we do, it doesn't necessarily have a practical implication, but here's a great opportunity to, one, assess these different behaviors, risks and needs, and then develop sort of programs or working with the counselors to then address those needs. That's been one area of interest that I want to pursue, is to actually have an impact on the samples, the communities, the children that we work with. So I'm super excited to be doing that work.
Alrighty, well, after a short break, we'll invite you all to come back and share some advice. We want to give you each enough time to be able to talk to parents, to the children, the young adults, and lend them some advice based on all the work that you've done on this really important issue of bullying. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss this. We'll see you after the break.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
While a lot is changing in our world, at Mediacom, our focus remains the same, making sure you have the fastest, most reliable connection possible. During this critical time, we know your needs are changing. You may be working or learning from home, relying on telemedicine, or finding new ways to keep everyone entertained. If you need more speed, call or go online, and Mediacom will double your speed immediately for as low as $10 more a month for 1 year.
Talking about the dramatic changes in the world around us and how bullying and aggression are influencing our youth. It's time for our guest now to share some practical advice on bullying and aggression. As a parent, educator, a teen, or an older brother or sister, this is important. Nicole, share some ideas with us and advice that you think is really important to people and who you'd be targeting with that advice.
So I think it's really important for parents and both educators to set clear expectations about digital behavior, and then ongoing monitoring. So if you're a parent, monitoring and having conversations with your child about, posting messages, going on social media. There are consequences to posting certain messages on there. So I think just continuing having conversations about that and how they might impact you in the long term.
And Nate?
A lot of the bullying that we work with and see is students are being bullied based on their identities, based on who they are. And so what I would like to say to all those students, who are struggling with that, you're loved, you're valued, no matter who you are. There are resources, there are supports for you. Please report the incident of bullying. Don't feel like you're alone, because honestly, you're not alone. And there are services and supports in your school for you to protect you. And so utilize those. Let an adult know what's happening for you, because if the school doesn't know what's happening, they can't help you. And so it's so important that you reach out to that adult.
And Chris?
Wow, it's hard to follow that, because my first piece of advice was going to be for parents to monitor, and my second piece was going to be for victims to speak up. So I guess my piece of advice then, what's left anyway, is going to be for the researchers and the scholars who are trying to work effortlessly to try to prevent bullying, cyberbullying from happening, is to stay current on what the field and what the literature, what they say, and to implement good, hard psychological theory to help guide what you want to do. What ends up happening a lot, and I see this a lot as an editor for aggressive behavior, is researchers are still concerned about prevalence rates when they should be more concerned about psychological processes, variables that predict when these behaviors occur or how people feel after they're victimized. That should be where people are going. And unfortunately, it's not going there fast enough. So if you're a researcher or a clinician or a school counselor and you want to collect data on this, make sure that you're staying current and you're staying active, and you can really make a good contribution to the literature if you do so.
And Nate, I wanted to come into another venue as well, because it's something that culturally is really hard for all of us. And that's the idea of giving advice to that bystander, to the large number of peers and potential peer-related mentors that could really be influential in exposing this behavior and helping those being bullied. What advice would you give to them, that person that may not have a strong connection to the bully or the person being bullied, but has an important role in this society to make sure it's healthy?
Yeah, I think what's important is all of us play this role of being a bystander in what's happening around us. Like I mentioned before, that our schools are mirroring our communities, and Frankly, what we see is, as the election looms, there's going to be more political-based bullying, and we're seeing kind of that behavior parroted out there. And so it's really important, just bystanders, anyone, we all have power in our voices, and to speak out and say, no, that's not okay, or that's not funny, what's happening, because bullying behavior is, they're acting it out. They're trying to get some attention sometimes, or it could be just for laughs. They think they're being funny. And us as bystanders, it's really critical, whether that's online or whatever else, to say, that's not cool, that's not funny, and show they don't have that support.
Nicole, what would you tell kids today? College, high school, middle school, what would you tell them when they're dealing with this world where there's so much aggression and bullying in TV and the news, and especially in this political climate? How would you tell them to approach that as part of their own peer group?
I think that it's an interesting question, Peter. I think you have to have conversations about what you're viewing in the media, what you're viewing politically. And as Nate said, supporting one another, standing up and saying, no, that's not okay. I think that's what peers can do to be supportive with one another in this climate, whether you're students at middle school or college students. I mean, we all can support one another and stand up when somebody's being bullied.
Chris, short answer. In short, do you think that we have to tell the youth that are going to build a future world that maybe we haven't done everything right and they need to look at what doesn't seem right and fix it?
100% yes. 100%. I think we need to be, especially with the media, we need to say, here's what we did. We didn't know what we were doing was right or wrong. It turns out some of it's wrong, some of it's right. So let's take what's wrong and try to fix it to make it better. 100%.
Thank you so very much, all of you. And thank you for joining us today. You can go to our website at ahealthyiowa.org for more information. Keep your eye on Mediacom MC22 for our next episode of Surviving Bad, where we explore Iowa stories of survival, hope, and inspiration on Mediacom MC22, your local programming leader.